Welcome to week 3 of Meal Prep Mastery. This week we'll be concentrating on haddock and we'll be making fish pie, cullen skink and kedgeree. To start with, peel the potatoes. I'm using Maris Piper as it's a good all-rounder, but a red rooster will also do the job here. Save about 200 grams of the potatoes for the cullen skink, then chop the rest of the potatoes into 2-inch chunks for the mash. Put them in a pot and rinse under cold water for a couple of minutes to wash off the starch. This will help prevent the mash from becoming gloopy. Bring a kettle to the boil and we'll use that water to boil our eggs. Now cut the remaining potatoes into 1 centimetre pieces and put them in another pot for the cullen skink. Place the pot with the potatoes for the mash on the stove and bring to the boil. Then place a pan with about 475 ml of milk on the stove. Add a bay leaf and bring to a simmer. If you have a pan with a lid, all the better, as it will prevent the milk from evaporating. But we can always use a little more milk or water if we need to, so don't worry. While the milk is coming to a simmer, take about 150 grams of the haddock, dice it and reserve this for the cullen skink. When the milk is simmering, add the haddock and cook gently until just cooked. About 5 minutes depending on how thick your fish is. Again, use a lid if you have one. While the potatoes and mash are cooking, let's get the veg prep done. Dice 3 onions, adding 1 to the pot with the diced potato, 1 to a pan we'll use for our sauce for the fish pie, and another to a pan or pot with a lid for the kedgeree. Now half a leek and dice it, adding 1/2 to the pot with the potatoes and the onions. Add a knob of butter or oil and place this pan on the stove and cook over a medium to low heat until the onions and leek are softened and sweetened. This will be for our cullen skink. Dice the remaining half leek and add this to the pan with the onion that we will use for the fish pie sauce. When the fish is cooked, gently remove it with a slotted spoon and set the milk and fish aside. Now place the pan with the onion and leek on the stove, add about 30 grams of butter and cook this over a medium to low heat until the vegetables are softened and sweet. Peel and mince 1½ cloves of garlic, or a really fat one like this if you have one. We'll use 1/3 for each of the dishes. Peel and mince a little knob of ginger, enough for a teaspoon. Hopefully you'll have a little left from last week. When the leeks and onions in both pans are soft and sweet, turn the heat down to low and add 1/2 clove of the minced garlic to each. When the kettle's boiled, fill another pot with hot water and bring back to the boil. Carefully add 2 eggs and cook for about 7 to 8 minutes, depending on the size. I cooked mine for 8 minutes and 7½ probably would have been about perfect. Now add the fish stock to the cullen skink pan. I used a stock pot as I found them to be good in the past, and it's very difficult to get fish bones to make our own stock. The reason I used fish stock here rather than using the milk I cook the fish in, like you'll see in most other recipes, is I believe you get a far superior flavour this way. The only downside to using fish stock cubes or pots is that while homemade fish stock is transparent, these stock cubes or pots are brown. But we're going to be adding creme fraiche or cream as well, so that will take care of that mostly. Add about 500 ml of water and bring the cullen skink to a simmer and then cook until the potatoes are tender. When the potatoes for the mash are ready, drain and allow to steam dry for a little while. My water has just come to the boil again as it was on the smallest hob, so I'm going to add my eggs and set the timer for 7 to 8 minutes. Now add 1.5 tablespoons of plain flour to the pan with the leeks and onions and cook out for a minute before gradually adding the milk you cooked the fish in. Try and leave about 150 to 200 ml of milk in the pan for the kedgeree. If you need any more milk, just add it from the carton. You want the sauce for the fish pie to be a little thinner than you think it should, as it will thicken up as it cooks in the oven as well. Check the potatoes in the cullen skink, and when ready, remove from the heat. When your eggs are cooked, run under a cold water tap to cool them down before we peel them. Once your cooked potatoes are dry, add about 25 grams of butter, or more if you prefer, and mash until smooth. Then add about 25 to 50 ml of milk, in stages and continue to mash and mix them until you have a nice pliable texture. If it's too thick, it will be difficult to spread over the pie filling. If you want to be a little more indulgent, you could use creme fraiche or cream here instead of the milk. When the sauce is ready, add about 50 grams of frozen peas and then break in just over half the cooked fish into the mixture and gently fold in. Set it aside to cool, as if we make up the pie straight away, the mash would just sink through the filling. Now zest half a lemon and finely chop before roughly chopping up some parsley and slicing your chives. I couldn't get hold of any chives, so I just used a little more parsley. Let's finish off the Cullen skink. Bring it back to a simmer and then add in 2 tablespoons of creme fraiche or double cream. Mix through and bring back to a simmer before adding the diced fish and cooking very gently for a minute or 2. This won't take long. Once the fish is cooked, take off the heat and set aside. While the Cullen skink and fish pie mixture is cooling, let's get our kedgeree on the go. Add the pan with the onion to the stove and sweat it off on a medium to low heat until sweet and softened in a little butter or oil. Turn the heat down to low and then add the remaining garlic and ginger and cook out for a minute before adding 2 teaspoons of curry powder. I used a little more here as I like it more like a biryani, I suppose. Then add a 1/4 teaspoon of ground coriander and a 1/4 teaspoon of turmeric. Cook out the spices for a minute, and if it gets a little dry, just add a little more butter or oil. Then stir in 125 grams of the long grain rice, making sure it's thoroughly mixed before adding in about 200 ml of chicken stock. I just used half a stock cube for this. Stir it all in, bring to a simmer, and then on a low heat cover and cook the rice for about 10 to 12 minutes. Depending on your kind of rice variety, so if you're using basmati, it'll probably be a little quicker. Check the rice from time to time to make sure it isn't sticking to the pan or becoming too dry. And if it does, just add a little water. Now, season the Cullen skink with a little lemon juice. And while the kedgeree is cooking, let's peel our eggs and quarter them before finishing off the fish pie. Place the mixture into your containers and then sprinkle with the lemon zest and chopped parsley, keeping some parsley for the kedgeree and the Cullen skink if you don't have any chives like me. Then spread the mash over and fork it up so that we get lots of nice crispy bits when we come to cook it in the oven. If you like, you can add some little dots of butter to the surface as well. I'm going to keep these in the fridge or freezer and then pop them into the oven at about 180 degrees for 20 to 25 minutes when I want them. A little bit longer if you're cooking it straight from the freezer. But you can cook them now and just reheat them later on if you like. Let's now portion and garnish the Cullen skink. I'm using parsley, but use the chives here if you have them. Once the rice has absorbed the chicken stock, give it a stir and then add the remaining milk from when you cooked the fish. Return to a simmer, put the lid back on and cook for another 4 to 5 minutes, keeping an eye on it. If the rice needs a little more milk or water, add it, and once the rice is cooked and most of the liquid has been absorbed, take it off the heat and allow to cool. Portion the rice and then flake the remaining fish over the rice. You can mix this all in together if you like, but I usually just mix it all once it's been reheated. Add the quartered boiled eggs and garnish with the parsley. We now have our fish pie, Cullen skink and our kedgeree. Enjoy your meals and I'll see you next week.